episode 2 of Walking Each Other Home.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you're the firm manager of Elder Law of Nashville. And we know each other, but I want other people to know you the way I know you. Your story, once people know it, they're like, oh, of course you ended up in elder law. And of course you ended up in Nashville. So let's start with your birth.
Yeah. I do like to say that I was born to serve seniors. My dad was 60 when I was born, my sweet daddy, Malcolm Griggs Lashlee. And unfortunately, he passed in 2005 when he was 85. But he was really one of the most important people in my entire life. And it continues to be even 17 years after his death. So my mom and dad had me, and my mom pretty much went to work, and my dad stayed home with me and was my caregiver and made sure that I had everything I needed and was fed and clean and clean clothes and went off to school and did my homework. My dad was my caregiver. My mom worked in nonprofit, anti-poverty my whole life. So she was the executive director for the YWCA when I was very little. So I've always had sort of an eye on the community and service in the community. That's, I think, something that was instilled from my very early days watching my mom serve the way she did.
You were the advocate for your dad.
Best illustrated, I think, in a story when I was in 7th grade. I was 11, a young 7th grader, and everyone had to give public speeches. And so we were practicing speaking publicly, which clearly I have not yet mastered. So everyone did things that were, fun. How to make French toast, a story about their family vacation. I did my speech was on the cycle of domestic violence. Yeah, not light, not fun, but I've always been a little bit serious, I think, because I've been watching the world.
You were the advocate for your dad when he was hard of hearing.
Well, yeah, certainly I've been an advocate for my father. He was injured in World War II. A grenade exploded behind him, so he lost a lot of his hearing almost for permanently since that time. And then also he walked with shrapnel in his legs his entire life. So my dad was always not just older, but a disabled veteran. And I was that kid that would be in a room with him and put my hands on my hips and say, "Speak up, he can't hear you," advocating because I wanted to take care of him. And I think that spirit very much lives inside of me today when I see any senior. And in our work that we do, I get to stick up for seniors, and I'm very good at that. I've been training for that my whole life. So when I was about 12 years old, my dad was working part-time at the funeral homes at that time. He would do the door calling hours. He'd get called out in the night to help make house removals, we called them. And he would drive the hearse in funerals. And so he was very much a fixture around the funeral homes, Moody Funeral Homes, where I'm from in the Hudson Valley, New York. I'm proud to call my hometown of Beacon, New York. And there were 3 funeral homes there, and I tagged along with my dad as much as I could. And when I was 12 years old, I said, I think I'm going to be a funeral director when I grow up. And this is well documented. I can only say I think it was a calling. I think it was a higher calling that I already knew that I would be good at that job, at that work. Watching my dad do it and knowing other funeral directors who were cool, were fun and had good senses of humor and weren't just dark and weird, the way most of us think of funeral directors. So with that, I started working at the funeral home when I got my braces off. When I was 15, my dad at that point was about 75, and it was difficult to stand for long hours, for calling hours. So I would say, I'll take the front door, and Dad, you go sit down and hang out, and I'll just kind of do this with you. So we partnered, and starting at the very ground level, emptying garbages after the calling hours and cleaning bathrooms, doing what needed to be done. That was my introduction.
So I'm thinking about how charming that must have been for people to come to the front door and be greeted by a 15-year-old.
Yeah, but you've seen pictures. I didn't look 15. I was trying to look like a 40-year-old in this brown suit that I was wearing, and my hair all short, and oh my gosh, it was so funny. But yeah, it probably lightened the mood a little bit. And sometimes I think that's necessary in funeral service. It gets very dark and very heavy, and there are some of us who can respectfully lighten the mood. So once I graduated from high school, I went right to mortuary college. In Hudson Valley Community College, I studied mortuary science and graduated in 1999, and then went to live at the funeral homes in Fishkill, New York, and lived there for almost 10 years. I bought into the business when I was 21, and then over that 10 years or so, we ended up buying another limousine company, a flower shop that was next door, and a monument company that we started. And so in the end, we sold our funeral homes in 2009, and we had 3 funeral homes, a flower shop, limo company, monument company. And and I left going, uh-oh, what do I do now?
So you were 29.
Yeah. I knew how to embalm really well. I knew how to do layouts and restorative art, and
how to put on makeup.
Restorative art,
as long as people are lying down.
Yes, I've said before, Barbara, I'm happy to do your makeup as long as you're laying down. So I had worked in funeral service for a very long time and known that it's actually quite dangerous for our health if you are an embalmer. Being around that formaldehyde all the time is pretty awful. And I was thinking more and more about that as I got older. So I think I was happy to be done with that, but not really sure what was next. So I went to live in an ashram for a few months in the Paradise Island in the Bahamas, run by the Shivananda organization, focused on service and peace. And so that's where I focused my attention for a while. So I was living in the ashram, learned how to teach yoga and meditate, got certified, all that, of course, and then came out and started teaching yoga around where I grew up. And it was great, but it wasn't exactly...
Not exactly a career.
Yeah, it wasn't the fulfilling thing I needed to do. I needed more of a, I don't know. I just needed more.
Intellectual stimulation.
I think so, yeah. So I said it was time to go back to college, the thing I had been putting off for so long. I hadn't had anything but my associate's degree. So I went to a community college, Westchester Community College, and did what a lot of people recommend. And I don't know how many people do this, but I think it really was great advice just to look at the college course book as a menu and just go crazy and enjoy it and have fun with it. And I did. And I took this one political science class and just loved it. And thought, okay, this is where my heart is. I love who gets what, when, where, and how. I love that. That's interesting to
Policy.
me. Mm-hmm. So then, lucky for me, Marist College is in Poughkeepsie, where I was from, and I said I'd like to go to Marist College, so I applied, I got in. And it was there that I met this awesome professor, Dr. Eckert, and she had said, hey, have you thought about law school? She taught my constitutional law class, and I took that class twice. So not a different class, but twice with her because I enjoyed it so much. And so she said, how about law school? And I thought, no, I was never a great student. I don't enjoy school the way a lot of people enjoy school, or some people enjoy school, but
Nobody
do love
enjoys
to
law
learn.
School.
I do love to learn. And I did want to expand my horizons. And I think that law school was able to do that for me ultimately. So I did go to law school. I went to New York Law School after Marist, graduated, and then found my way to Tennessee because...
There's a story there. Yeah. How did you end up in Nashville?
Right.
You floated into Nashville, into my office.
Well, I followed my heart, I want to say. My whole life we'd been coming down here every summer because my dad was born in Tennessee. He was born in Camden, Tennessee in 1919. And so when he was coming up and was a young man, a young teenager, there weren't many prospects. His dad was also a veterinarian and was struggling in Camden at that time. So my dad went off with the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps.
Right.
Yeah, amazing. FDR New Deal program. where my dad went off with all these other young men who were kind of languishing, right, at that time, and planted trees across the country. How cool was that? Perfect for my father. So he did that, and then eventually found his way to New York after he was a limousine driver, as a matter of fact. So he found his way to New York, became a short order cook there, and then ended up getting drafted into World War II, served, and then came back to Beacon. I say all this because he ended up settling there, finding his family and raising a family. But he was a Tennessean through and through. Every chance he got, you knew he was from Tennessee. You knew he's never lost his accent, ever. And every time, there was any Tennessee sport on, you knew who we were all rooting for. So we came down to Camden pretty much every summer to see my cousins. And after my dad passed, of course, we actually stopped doing that. So I think in my heart, I always knew I wanted to come down here and be a part of this Tennessee family that I have here. And lucky for me, I'll be spending a month there in July at my cousin Brett Lashlee's cabin, where he
at
Lashlee's Crossing, where my family owned 30,000 acres before the TVA came and eminent domain took over. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, they bought, I'm sure, for cents on the dollar. Anyway, so it really does feel right for me to be in Tennessee. It feels like home. I feel very comfortable here with people that were born and raised with Southern values.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Elder law, people don't realize that elder law includes helping families who have family members who are disabled. Mm-hmm. And that's something you're very passionate about.
I am.
I think people would like to know the story. We never identify clients by name or anything that would disclose confidential information. But we helped a family where a woman with cerebral palsy had lived with her mother all her life, and then mom died. Tell that story, Shannon.
Right. The mom and daughter had developed such a close bond. Inseparable, I believe they were. And so when she died, it was earth-shattering for her daughter because she was dealing with, having the disabilities associated with cerebral palsy. And she was nonverbal. But she has just lost her other half. And she's at this point almost 50. She had already, lived a really strong life because her mom was just so awesome.
Good
so
mom.
Amazing. Yeah. So when we met her, we were worried, what's going to become of this woman who now very much has to go into a facility with a home with other people where she can receive the care that she needs. Paying for care at home is impossible for most people. I think the number is around
$250,000 a year.
It's insane. Yeah, it's not possible for most people to live that way, and it's isolating. And it wasn't her mother who would have been caring for her anymore. So we really did have to make the difficult decisions with her cousin, who was helping care for her, who loves her very much. We had to make the difficult decision as a group to transfer to a facility. And that was scary for all of us. We were all worried until, what was like a month or two later. And we found out she has now become the president of the community council. What was the name of the
president of the people there? I don't know exactly what they call it.
It's like a council, like a community council group. Yeah. And she's the president, and she went to her first prom. I mean, how amazing that not only is she okay, she's thriving. And sometimes, we are worried about, these changes and transitions. But I think sometimes, with the right support, which we had, we have our social worker going in and making sure she's really comfortable, making sure she's settling as she should, introducing her to everybody, really hand-holding. I think that made a big difference here. But that transition doesn't have to be awful. It can be something great. And in this case, in that client's life, we made her life so much better. And I'm so proud of that, because it really would have been just a very sad life for her to be alone after her mom passed.